We are back on Sports Illustrated All Bengals, and a fan favorite. You'll see his stuff over on social media. Greg Cosell, you see his work over on NFL Matchup, over on ESPN. Greg, how you doing?
Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Not too bad. Things are a little iffy in Cincinnati right now. They're coming off two straight losses. You can find ways that they should have won against the Chargers and the Niners, but I'm going to start with some positive stuff because you break it down plenty of times. You can see your work over on ESPN, and we're going to start with Joe Burrow in the fourth quarter. Joe Burrow was lights out and clutch when it mattered in the fourth quarter in the game against the Niners. Can we just talk about those touchdown passes to Jamar Chase?
Well, I thought Burrow was outstanding overall in the game. I thought he threw the ball very well. I thought he made tough throws under pressure. When a team loses, obviously fans look for reasons why, and that's fine. But I thought that Burrow really played well in this game, and he was not the reason that they lost the game. So you're talking about the two individual touchdowns that he threw to Chase.
Yep.
Well, the first one was actually the one where he made the second reaction play, as I recall, correct? That was the one where he left the pocket and just made, those kinds of plays are always hard for us to break down. Like, for instance, on the matchup show, we would never break that down simply because it's just a second reaction play. There's not a lot of, route concept, tactical element to it other than a quarterback, having to leave the pocket and then make just a great play. And Burrow's more than capable of that. And, it's funny to me. I think Burrow, and I'm not in Cincinnati. You are, obviously. Burrow strikes me as a guy that is extremely confident at times, almost to a fault, where he can be a little reckless. And I think that will be channeled as he plays more. Lindsay's only in his second year, and I think people forget that because it seems like he's been around for a long time, but he's only a second-year player who missed the last part of his rookie year. With social media, everybody analyzes every minute of a person's life. And so it seems like he's been playing for a long time, but he's probably still trying to figure out at times what throws he can make, what throws he can't make, because he just strikes me from tape study as being a really aggressive mindset kind of player. Like, he believes he can make throws, and he's very aggressive throwing to the one-on-ones outside the numbers, even when corners are in off coverage. When you're probably coached not to make those kinds of throws, Lindsay, he throws the ball outside the numbers to his receivers. So that particular play was just Burrow making an unbelievably great play. And actually, he threw the ball away from where Chase was when he threw it. So that was just a case where he kind of felt that he knew what Chase would do in response to his throw.
A lot of people talk just obviously about the connection. He's familiar with Jamar Chase, but in the NFL, it's kind of wild to see because, like you mentioned, Jamar wasn't even there when Burrow got rid of the ball, and it's 4th and 5. Crazy. They need to come back in the fourth quarter to make it a game. And it's just wild, the chemistry that both of them have right now.
Yeah. And the 32-yarder, the one that came with 125 remaining in the fourth quarter, that was sluggo, slant and go versus the rookie corner from Michigan, Ambry Thomas. And the safety to that side was on the hash with his eyes on Burrow. And Burrow firmly believed that he would not be a factor on the throw, particularly when he took the snap and saw that the safety Ward did not move. So when the safety Ward did not move toward Chase, once Burrow took the snap, he knew that he could drop that ball in the bucket at the pylon and that the safety Ward would not get there. I was trying to figure out the coverage on that. It looked like it might have been cover 3, but I don't know that for sure. But that was just a great throw because you want to make sure that you put it on the outside in case the safety does rotate over. And he put it as far outside as you possibly could without being out of bounds. And he just, as they say, he dropped it right in the bucket. That was a beautifully thrown ball.
Let's stay with Jamar Chase right now. There are still people out there, despite the fourth quarter that he had to get those 2 touchdown catches, that say, oh, he drops the ball too much. What would you say to that when you watch some of the film?
I mean, I would say that he probably has a drop or two that you'd prefer that he doesn't have. I don't think I'd say he has bad hands. And again, some of those drops, I know he had one early in the game where I couldn't tell if the ball was slightly tipped or not, but he's had a few too many. Again, you're working through that. I mean, he's a rookie, and granted, he was a high pick, and I personally thought that he and Kyle Pitts were the two best overall prospects in the draft class, but he's a rookie. So there's just things he has to work through, things he has to get more comfortable with. I wouldn't view this as a problem in the sense that, oh my God, he's got bad hands. But, ideally he works through it. One of the reasons, and I actually did a piece on this in last week's matchup show, one of the reasons I think his numbers have dropped to some degree is the way defenses have been playing the Bengals. And that's why T. Higgins' numbers have gone up, because Jamar Chase is predominantly the boundary X, meaning he's the single receiver to the short side of the field. And more teams have been playing with a safety over the top. And that means that when you work to the trip side, the three receiver side, you get better matchups. And I think that's one reason why Higgins' numbers have really improved over, I don't know, the last maybe 3-4 weeks it's been.
I want to get to T. Higgins in just a moment. I want to go back to Joe Burrow because I feel like that was one of his best games as a pro. Yep. But prior to that, you could look at a lot of games in key situations, red zone interceptions. You mentioned that he's been reckless at times. Is, aggressiveness that you see out of the quarterback and him not afraid to want to make the play. And yes, he's taken one too many sacks and some are on Burrow. What would you say?
Correct. I would say that that's something that he'll ideally work through, Lindsay. Just to me from watching tape, I've been watching coaching tape since 1992. So to me, and again, coaches have different points of view. Reasonable people can disagree on these kinds of things. To me, I would rather my quarterback be aggressive and then channel that with experience as opposed to being risk averse, because I don't think you can be a great quarterback. And I've been doing this a long time, Lindsay. I don't use the word great loosely. I don't think you can be a great quarterback, which is clearly what the Bengals expect. He was the number one pick in a draft. I don't think you can be that guy by being cautious and risk averse. So I would rather see Burrow be aggressive, have that kind of mindset, and then ideally over time, as he gains more experience, channel that and understand, hey, now is not the time to make that throw. Hey, now is the time to make that throw based on the game situation. My guess is he's probably a pretty sharp kid, and he'll figure that out.
Let's go to the wide receiver room. T. Higgins, you brought it up. He's less than 200 yards away from 1,000-yard season. Yep. Jamar Chase just hit over 1,000 yards against the Niners, and you look at the way he started to play. Unfortunately, when Joe Burrow's rookie year was cut short, I was really bummed about it for all kinds of reasons, because you don't want a quarterback to go through an injury like that, but also the chemistry that you really started to see with him and T. Higgins. Some would say that was a steal for the Bengals in the 2020 draft when they went wide receiver. A lot of people still a little bit surprised about it. But having guys like we've talked about plenty this offseason, from Tyler Boyd in the slot, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they're really showing that this is a hard group to defend right now.
Yeah, and I remember watching T. Higgins come out of Clemson, and I really liked his tape. And again, because I think he ran a 4.57 or a 4.58, he got dinged for that. But he's a big guy with a great wingspan, a wide catching radius, good hands. Because of his size, I learned years and years ago, and it took me a while to figure it out, that stride length is a trait for a receiver. So he can get vertical because of his stride length. He doesn't have to be a 4.4 guy. So while he's not purely explosive in that sense, I think that he can run intermediate routes very well. We see how well he works the middle of the field on a lot of those dig balls, on a lot of those bang eights. He can get vertical. We saw him catch a touchdown. It might have been the week before. I can't remember, but it was a classic case of Burrow throwing when there was an off coverage corner and he just gave Higgins a chance. It might have been 2 weeks ago, because it was the week before, I think, when he hit him on the seam ball and he went up and got it. So I like T. Higgins, and I think he works really well opposite Chase, because as I said, Chase tends to be the boundary X. Higgins is really the Z. The Z is the movement receiver. He can go in motion. You can move him before the snap of the ball. And we know Boyd, for the most part, is the slot receiver. So it's a really good trio of receivers. Because of Chase and Higgins, Boyd's numbers have slipped a little bit, but that's not any. It's not a function of the fact that he's not a good player anymore. It's just they've got three really good receivers.
We'll get back to Lindsay Patterson's conversation with Greg Cosell of NFL Films and NFL Matchup right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk in just a second. But I got to tell you about MyBookie, because whether it's Wilder versus Fury, Mayweather versus Pacquiao, or this Saturday, Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley, it's going to be no different. And you can't miss out with MyBookie.ag. They have the best odds and prop bets for Paul versus Woodley round 2. You can start by doubling your initial deposit all the way up to $1,000 with promo code Bengals Talk, BENGALSTALK. That's it. And you can get some free money, baby, to wager on whatever you want, from Paul Woodley to week 15 of the NFL season, where the Bengals look to keep pace in the AFC playoff race against the Denver Broncos. So you can do all of that and so much more with MyBookie.ag. Don't miss out. Use promo code Bengals Talk to double that first deposit up to $1,000 in free play. Paul Woodley too, and so much more. It's so much better with MyBookie.
Let's flip to the defensive side right now. Getting pressure is one thing that past defenses have really struggled with in Cincinnati. They get this free agent signing in Trey Hendrickson, and he's proving a lot of people wrong what he can do out there on the field. He was injured, left the game early against the Niners. They're optimistic he'll be there against the Broncos. What do you think of this defensive line right now, and just even the addition of Trey Hendrickson?
I think it's been pretty solid. I mean, I think Sam Hubbard's turned into a nice player. You know, they play a lot of 5-man fronts, depending on what the opponent puts out on the field. You know, I think the loss of Logan Wilson is big. Is he due to come back, Lindsay? What's his injury?
I will say Zach Taylor's optimistic that he could be back against Baltimore. So more than likely we'll miss this week.
Because I think he's a really, really good player. So I think that's a meaningful loss to their defense. But I think their defensive line, for the most part, has been pretty solid. I think ultimately, and you still want your defense to be good, obviously, but I think they've sort of built this a little bit around the fact that they're an offensive team first, and hopefully they can rush the core, which is why they got Hendrickson. The ideal world for this team is that they have a big-time back, big-time quarterback, 3 really good receivers, and that they can score points and be ahead and force the opponent to be one-dimensional. And then they can start to rush the quarterback. That's the plan. Does it always work out that way? Of course not. It's the NFL. The other team, there's another team out there. But I think that's ideally the plan. Whether that works, we have to, that remains to be seen. But, I think that's the approach they really want to take.
One of the things when it comes to extensions in the off seasons, a lot of people wanted Jessie Bates to be extended. Rumors out there, he wanted to be the highest paid safety in the league. And there are times that he's struggling this season, but I can still see Cincinnati finding the right number and extending him this off season. If you watch the game versus the Niners, he had an almost pick 6 to really end the game.
Yep, I remember that.
In regulation, what do you say to people who say, Jessie Bates is struggling, he's not playing like a top safety right now?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I don't, obviously I can't chart every player when I watch tape because I have to get through a lot of games. But I think Jessie Bates is a good player. I would say that this year, when I've watched the Bengals defense, I don't think he's been quite as impactful as in other years, but I think he's a good player. And, when people say those kinds of things, they never think of the second point. So the point is, let's say you decide as a fan, well, he's not as good, so we don't want him. Well, then who's going to play the position? You got to put someone out there, Lindsay. And Jessie Bates is a good player who can be a great player at times. So, you don't want to just let him walk. Now, again, I don't get into the money issues. That's not my thing, as you know. So I don't know what that means. But, you don't want to really let the guy walk. I mean, you got to, because then you got to put someone out there who's not likely going to be as good as Jessie Bates.
Let's move on to what's happening this weekend. They're on the road after 3 straight at home. All games feel like must wins in the next Final Four. They still have a shot at the division. And next is the Denver Broncos. What's that matchup going to look like for this offense and defense?
Well, I think for the defense, number one, you got to stop the run game. It's a 2-headed monster with 2 backs that are very tough, physical inside runners, highly competitive, urgent inside runners. Javonte Williams I thought was the best runner coming out of this past draft class. And he is really difficult to bring down. He's got outstanding contact balance, really strong finishing traits. The classic back that when you think he gets 5, he gets 9. And that's a big difference in the NFL. So this is a week where they really have to be physical. They have to, it's a lunch pail game, as they say. They're going to have to tackle. And that's the starting point. Now, it's funny because the Broncos have really good receivers, but they're not really a passing team. And that's probably a function of the coaching staff believing that Teddy Bridgewater is a complement more than a lead dog. And with those two backs, they start with the run game. On the other side, this will be a very interesting game for Joe Burrow because Vic Fangio is the head coach and really the defensive coordinator. And you talk to people around the league, Lindsay, and I know you do. Vic Fangio is kind of a savant when it comes to defense, and he's going to show you some things that are just going to be a little different. How he gets to certain things, how he uses his safeties in particular. Justin Simmons, one of the best safeties in the league. Burrow is going to just have to really be aware after the snap. That's one thing that Vic Fangio does really well with his safeties. The way he uses them after the snap of the ball to make the quarterback have to think as he's dropping back when the game is happening really fast. So I'm very anxious to see how Joe Burrow acquits himself this week because this is not an easy defense to play against.
Greg Cosell, you've told me plenty of times off the air in interviews that you do not tweet, but you do retweet a lot of your highlights. And I know fans are very familiar with your work over on NFL Matchup. Where can fans follow you on Twitter?
Oh, well, I do, as you probably know, Lindsay, a bunch of radio shows. I do national shows, as well. So normally what I do is I just retweet all that stuff because believe it or not, I'm actually spending most of my time because I work about 70 hours a week, either, doing my shows and watching tape. I try to watch as much tape as I possibly can. So to me, that's more important to me than sitting composing tweets. So, a lot of people have hit me up on Twitter saying, I wish you tweet more. And maybe I should. I don't know. But it takes time because, I'm not one of those people, Lindsay, that's going to tweet, hey, I just got a great cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not one of those people. I figured I don't really care when people tell me that they got a great cup of coffee. So why would they care that I did? So, I just feel like I have better use of my time studying tape.
Wow, I feel like this is some advice for myself because
I wasn't personal, Lindsay. I'm sorry.
No. I spend way too much time on social media and Twitter, but make sure you're following along. He is one of the best in the business. And Greg Cosell, I can't thank you enough for joining us over on All Bengals.
Sure, Lindsay. Thanks so much.